So far in CSS, we know how to use just straight up HTML selectors, ID selectors, and class selectors. But what we're going to talk about now are descendant selectors. And descendant selectors are basically the ability to add multiple selectors on one line in CSS in order to select something very specific. So in order to show you what we're talking about and to illustrate this properly, we're going to create a new file. We're going to go ahead and call that descendant.html. And I'm going to just copy some basic structure here from one of these pages. There we go, inline.html. And I'm going to paste that in our descendant.html file and change this title to Descendant Selectors. Now I'm going to add some HTML here that we haven't done yet, just to kind of give you a bit better of an example, something a bit more realistic. So I'm going to add some div tags here, and this div is going to have the class of primary box. And in here, I'm going to put a level 2 heading and say primary box, and then a paragraph tag and say this is some fancy content within the primary box. And I am going to add an emphasis tag around fancy content. There we go. So we have our primary box. And I'm going to copy that and change this to secondary box. And just change the H2 here to secondary box. And I will say this is some fancy content within the secondary box. And then I'm just going to copy both of those and paste it one more time. So we have 4 instances of these divs: primary, secondary, primary, secondary. You can see over here in the web browser, we just have some very plain, simple, and semantic HTML. And what we're going to do is play around with some classes to style our primary and secondary boxes. And then we're going to use some descendant selectors to jump into the primary box and be specific to style elements within the primary box and secondary box. So we need to link our our CSS in our HTML document here. And you should know how to do that. And I'm just going to change up the order of the attributes here just to show you that it's okay to choose your own order. In fact, this is my preferred way. I like saying link href and then link to the style sheet and then tell the browser, hey, by the way, the relationship of this style sheet, of this document is a style sheet. And then you can go ahead and say type text CSS. Okay, so we already have our yellow box here and our yellow background content. I'm okay with that. If you're not, go ahead and change it. You should know how to do that now in your CSS. Jump into your style.css and then add a new comment here. And let's just say styles for the Descendant Selector lecture. There we go. Now in here, we're going to add some styles. Okay, so let's select our primary box. That's a class. And we'll just select the primary box like so using a class selector. Very simple. You can see here that our brackets software is letting us know that these are the primary boxes. So it's a kind of a cool, helpful tip if you're using brackets. Okay, so let's just add some styles here. I'm going to give this a background color of white. There we go. And I'm going to say border solid 10 pixels. And I'm going to use 333. That's a good gray. I always like that gray. And then let's add some padding inside this box and just say 20 pixels. Now you might be wondering, why is there some, it looks like there's more than 20 pixels on the top and the bottom. Well, that's because the level 1 heading or the level 2 heading in here and the paragraph, they have default margins that are built right into the styles of the browser. The browser, whatever browser you're using, it has its own default styles. just kind of built in for layout purposes. And you can remove that just by selecting the level 2 headings and say margin 0, padding 0. And we will get there using what's called a CSS reset, but don't worry about that right now. It's okay the way it is. Okay, so that's our primary box. Why don't we go ahead and change the secondary box, give that some styles here. And we will say background color. Let's do the 333, that dark gray. And of course, we're going to need to change that text color. So that's just the color property. The value we could just change to FFF, which is white. Now you might be wondering, if you're looking in Photoshop, you might see that FFF or white is actually FFF, FFF, 6. There are actually 6 digits or characters in these hex codes. So why am I putting 3 instead of 6? Well, if they are the same 3 kind of characters or numbers afterwards, like in this case, 6 Fs, you can actually just do 3 Fs. And the same goes if you were to do FC3, for example. You're just, how does this work? Is it FC3, FC3? No, because you could see that that's a pink color. The way that this works is actually if each pair is a duplicate. So let me make sense of this by just typing it out. FFCC33. You can minimize the duplicate just to FC3. So just a little trick. You don't have to do that, but it's nice to be able to do that. And I'm just going to make this white, FFF. And why don't we just say padding 10 pixels? And now I can see when I'm looking over here that these styles actually, these elements have some default styles, like the paragraph text is italic. That's because further up here, we're just styling the paragraph tags to be font size 18 and italic. So this is where we can use Descendant Selectors to our advantage and be more specific, because I can't really change the font size in here, and it won't change because it's already declared up there using an HTML element to style it, and it's not going to change because I'm selecting the secondary box, trying to change the font size of the entire element, but the paragraph tag within it has already an established font size. So if I want to change that, we could just do this. This is called a descendant selector. So secondary box, I'm going to select the box, but I want to jump in and select the paragraph tag. So space, the next element or selector. There we go. That is a descendant selector. It is selecting the descendant of this element. So you could see we have the paragraph tag. It is a descendant of the secondary box, this entire box right here. So I'm selecting the paragraph tag here within the secondary box. And now I can style it. And because it's pretty specific, I'm able to actually change the font size to 12 pixels, font style, normal. I don't want it italic. Let's make this a bit bigger because that's a little bit small. There we go. So now you can see that I'm selecting the paragraph tag within the secondary box. What if I wanted to be even more specific? And so I'll say secondary box, and I wanted to select the M tag within the paragraph tag. I can do this. Whoops. There we go. So now I just jumped even further down. Secondary box, space, paragraph tag, space M. This means I'm looking for the M tag within the paragraph tag within the secondary box. And there we go. Now I can say color FC3, FC3 for that hot pink color. And there we go. So now I'm using descendant selectors to select that content. Now, what if I just did this? Well, that still works, but now this means if I were to add some HTML, let's say back in our descendant.html file, and I just say in the secondary box here, I just put an M tag just outside somewhere else, and I said, this is emphasized text. Now, you could see the emphasized text is getting that color, but what if I don't want to select all emphasized text within the secondary box. Well, like I just did, I want it to be, as long as it's within a paragraph tag. Now this emphasized text will not get the style that this specific one is getting. And the same goes for the primary box. If I want to just do something specific here in the primary box, let's say primary box, and let's jump to the paragraph tag within the, no, let's jump even better, the H2 within the primary box. Let's say font family Helvetica, Arial Sans Serif. There we go. And so that's kind of how you use descendant selectors. You can jump down into as many elements as you want. Right here I'm just using 2, but right here I'm using 3. And you can keep going and going to be very specific. And so that's how you use descendant selectors. It's quite simple and straightforward, and just gives you more power when you're trying to select elements within CSS.